Welcome to the webinar series of the Cambridge Service Alliance. Today we are presenting Facilitating Co-Creation in Living Labs, the Joseph case study. I have the pleasure to introduce my colleagues Katarina Grieve from Cambridge University, Julia Jones from Joseph's, Professor Andy Neely and Professor Catherine Modlin. We are a team of people who we were supported by NEMODE in the development of this study around living labs in the facilitation for co-creation. And today we are going to present the study and the results from 3 months of study. Now it is over my colleague Katarina.
Thank you. Good morning and welcome to the Cambridge Service Alliance webinar. My name is Katharina Grieve and today we're presenting our latest research on facilitating co-creation in living labs, and the study has been conducted in collaboration with colleagues from the University of Erlangen-Nuremberg. And I would also like to introduce Dr. Julia Jonas from the University of Erlangen-Nuremberg, who has been involved with the Living Lab case Joseph from day one. And in more detail about this case study, she will present at a later stage during the presentation. So first I would like to briefly explain what I mean with co-creation and what is a living lab. So co-creation is essentially about the collective creativity that results in an outcome that is not known in advance, and that's something very distinctive to this concept and different to other concepts. And on the other hand, a living lab is essentially the place where co-creation takes place, and every living lab is very unique in its setup, layout and purpose. However, the focus of this concept lies on open innovation and co-creation in a real-life setting. So specifically for policymakers, this is useful because it allows them to design, explore, experience, and refine new policies before the implementation. Examples include, for instance, projects like MedLab, which is the Mediterranean Living Lab for Tutorial Innovation, and their objective is to apply the Living Lab approach from the demand side of regional policy, building on concrete pilot projects to construct a governance network that brings economies of R&D scope, social innovation, and policy coherence to all levels, from the local community to the transnational scale. So during the presentation, I would like to outline first the problems industry faces with regards to new product and service development, and then link this to our research objective, which is to study how co-creation can be facilitated in living labs. And third, I will briefly present the research approach of the study. And then next, Julia will introduce the living lab case of Joseph's and explain it in a little bit more detail. And then afterwards, I will contrast the findings from theory with practice and present 5 factors that are critical to the facilitation of co-creation in living labs. Finally, I will conclude this presentation by discussing our research findings and contributions. So I think we can all agree that innovation is important on a macro level as well as on a micro level. It drives economic growth across economies, but it also plays a crucial role in growth, survival, and success of organizations. However, businesses face a number of challenges today. For instance, the high failure rate of new product and service innovations, the increasing pressure to reduce time to market and cost of introducing new products or services. But at the same time, we can also observe that there's a shift from passive consumers to active innovators. So customers are no longer passive players, but now together with the company, they actually are participating actively in the co-creation of value. So for this reason and addressing these challenges, living labs have gained popularity, which allow customers to do exactly this, to collaborate with companies in the development of new products, services, and business models. However, many living labs have failed to fulfill expectations. So therefore, our research objective is to explore, identify, and analyze factors that are critical to the facilitation of co-creation in living labs. So our question is, how can co-creation be facilitated in living labs? And for the purpose of the study, we would like to compare research about co-creation in living labs with the view of practitioners. So first, we conducted a rigorous systematic literature review, which led to the analysis of 278 academic papers. And then we compared this with practice and conducted several workshops, interviews, observations with staff that is involved in operational, strategic, as well as research activities at a living lab. And last but not least, we also carried out a half-day workshop with companies that utilized this living lab. And we used questionnaires and additional documents to derive further insights. So now I would like to hand over to Julia, who's going to introduce you to our case, Joseph's. Okay, Julia, this is your turn.
Thank you, Katharina.
Muted.
Joseph's, the service manufactory, as we call it, is a living lab. It has been established in 2014, so it has been run a bit longer than 2 years now. It is located in the city center of Nuremberg, and it incorporates 5 co-creation spaces which go under one common theme. That means every 3 months another set of 5 co-creation spaces will be offered with a topic to provide an experience to the public. So it is a store location which is really very close to the shopping street in the center of Nuremberg. It's open for everyone who wants to come in at regular shopping hours from Monday morning to Saturday evening. And all in all, it is set up by the Fraunhofer Center for Applied Research for Supply Chain Services and the Chair of Information Systems at University Erlangen-Nuremberg, or at least they are operating it in terms of Fraunhofer ES and Friedrich-Alexander University Erlangen-Nuremberg. The interactivity of the co-creation process happening in this space is something that is very important. So to have fun, to offer an area where you can touch things and try things out, to experience services and get an idea and grasp what innovations are like is very important. Here you can see some impressions from the different theme worlds and really see how it is supposed to be a stimulating atmosphere, how visitors, users who come in are invited to play around, have some games involved and interact with the space and the new services and products that are being co-created at Joseph's. As I mentioned, the process is a 3-month period. So a company would actually book in for a project and be part of the space at Joseph's for 3 months. And a typical project thereby looks as follows. First, together with the Joseph's support and the guidance, a company defines a research question and establishes the right research design to tackle that research question and to find the right methods. Maybe it's about acceptance, about price, about usability, but also about bringing new technology to different markets. And then the research design is really tricky and important to be set up as interactive. Second, there is this 3-month test phase at Joseph's. So the co-creation space, the so-called business island, is set up with the start of a new theme world. During these 3 months, you can readjust the island and the interaction depending on interim results and follow an agile process, and thereby feedback from about 1,000 co-creators in this 3-month period can be generated and derived and even read between the lines. And this information has been collected, qualitative and quantitative, documented, and in between the line is in a third step put together in a presentation and presented and discussed in a workshop at the firm. So
Unmuted.
Joseph's. So again, just to remind us, we wanted to know how this co-creation process can be facilitated in living labs. So first we explored the existing literature and categorized in 5 areas. Most co-creation elements the literature talks about, they have to do with customer engagement, relationship management, and a few of them, they relate to the design layout of a living lab. However, what's really interesting is that the blue highlighted element of dialogue is mentioned in existing literature and has also been mentioned by Joseph's and the companies. So a research team member at Joseph's points out that their internal emails are useful even when they haven't been in the living lab. They're just a short summary of the day and what happened. Also, company founder and CEO who participated in one of our workshops highlighted the importance of dialogue and said, an internal communication tool would help us to communicate effectively and carry on dialogue, which is key to this experience. So findings from the workshops with Joseph's highlight additional aspects and focus more on relationship management with customers, the operating principle of the living lab and its design layout, as well as data collection approach. Interestingly, 2 elements are reported by both Joseph's and the companies as key in the co-creation process, one being comfortable atmosphere and the second one managing expectations. So here the practitioners agree. And the research team member at Joseph's again highlights that you also have to communicate that the things which are displayed here, they might break. If they break, they're poorly designed. So actually expectation setting is important. In line with this, also a business development manager who participated in our workshop said, I think what will be good from Joseph's side is to clearly describe the expectations to the company representatives that would like to develop products here. It is not about the great amount of empirical data that you can rely on here, but based on our perspective, it is about identifying the problem. So the workshop with companies at Joseph's brought forward more elements these companies consider as important when co-creating value with customers at Joseph's. So for example, the operating principle of the living lab plays a major role for new companies because it outlines the concepts and values of the living lab and how companies can engage with them. Also, sharing of knowledge and best practices that go actually beyond the company's own experience in the living lab is described as critical by a company workshop participant who said, from Joseph's side, documentation of best practice would be beneficial, whether this is contents-wise, links to other company projects or tools that have been successful in other projects. The beauty is that you can create a knowledge base as time goes on, and hence added value can be created, which is based on best practices. So in summary, this table highlights the results derived from the literature review, which are highlighted in yellow, and the results from Joseph's in orange, and insights from the company workshops in red. So grouped in 5 categories, we identified in total 41 elements that are critical to the facilitation of co-creation in living labs. There's only one element that is supported by theory, living lab, as well as companies, which is dialogue. and 2 further elements that Joseph and companies agree on. So the comfortable atmosphere, managing expectation is something practitioners agree on. So integrating these different co-creation elements in one framework allows us to conclude that A, theory does not pay much attention to aspects relating to the operating principle, design layout of a living lab, and data collection approach. However, literature discussed behavioral aspects such as motivation and incentives of the customer, which in turn is acknowledged but not seen as critical co-creation element by living lab facilitators nor companies. Joseph strongly focused on the operational goals, and the main effort is put towards the relationship to the customer, as they are key to the co-creation process, and engaging them in turn also benefits the firm. So for similar reasons, emphasis is put on the data collection approach and design layout of the living lab, as well as the individual business islands. So again, Joseph focused heavily on the relationship to the customer, engaging them, trying to create everything very interactive to receive the feedback, which again, in turn will benefit the firm. However, the companies, they focus more on sharing of knowledge and best practices that go beyond their own experience in the living lab. So more specifically, companies consider the relationship between them and Joseph as important, but they spend less thought on the relationship between Joseph and the customer, although the customer is the one involved in the co-creation process with the company. So the operating principle of the living lab plays a major role for the companies because it outlines the concept and values of the living lab and how companies can engage with them. And also possibly because they have to justify expenses they spend on engaging in this process. So further, the data collection approach is critical to companies because it's a unique method they can utilize in this setting and very different to traditional market research. So overall, there's not much agreement between theory and practice with regards to how co-creation can be facilitated in living labs, and therefore highlighting the need for further research in this domain. In terms of contributions, our framework outlines 41 elements grouped in 5 critical co-creation categories. We identified 4 coming from literature, 15 coming from Joseph's, and 9 from companies. And we have 3 overlaps, being the ones I mentioned: dialogue, managing expectation, and comfortable atmosphere. And we can also see that we have made a contribution to existing theory by adding 9 factors relating to relationship management, 7 to operating principles, 6 to design layout, and 4 additional elements outlining how you can facilitate co-creation in living labs that relate to the data collection approach. And this altogether gives us first insight into the operational activities and design structures that are implemented to facilitate co-creation in living labs. So we hope that through this study, we can give living labs companies, but also policymakers, a deeper understanding on the factors that are relevant to consider when engaging in co-creation. And conducting further workshops to derive insights from customers who co-create value to get a more complete picture is one of the next steps we would like to take. And at this stage, we would also like to acknowledge the contribution of NEMODE to support this research. Thank you very much for your attention, and we welcome any questions you may have. Please send us your questions through the chat function. Thank you.
Alternatively, if you want to ask a question, you can unmute yourself and ask the question straight away. We are very happy to hear your views. If you cannot unmute yourself, please let me know and I can unmute you. Here there is a question coming for Katerina. Is Joseph relevant for any company business to consumer, or both?
Thank you very much for this question. It's definitely very interesting to see that Joseph's not only caters for B2C, but also for B2B. And we can see a trend that also B2B is very interested to take the next step and understand what the end consumer wants. So, for instance, there was one company interested in hearing the views of customers about their home security system. So although they would not sell directly to the end customer, they want to know what the end customer thinks to improve the product and really deliver a service that meets the needs of the customer. And for this reason, I think Joseph's is a fantastic space to allow B2C as well as B2B companies to explore this opportunity.
Very good. There is another question coming, and this is about what will be what the firms perceive as a direct takeaways from this co-creation process in Joseph. Julia or Catherine, do you have any insights into this question, please?
I think Julia is probably most suitable as she's involved since day one to answer this question. Just 1 second, we're just going to unmute her.
Muted.
Thank you for this question. So I think the takeaways that firms have really developed over time. We have had specific cases at Joseph's where there was some usability, either web-based or really in the space, which could be learned and improved right away. That was really things that we could iteratively change and improve. Then there are like, I don't know, translating user interfaces into English, even if you are in a very traditional German town. It is like seeing how people interact with things. And actually, we had a company who was producing in Nuremberg, and people didn't understand that. So they immediately thought about how can we actually stress this unique selling point of ours, and how can we place it in on our interface that people would understand that. So there is learnings that can be taken away immediately and also be adapted really quick. Then there is some takeaways as the networking and the contact with different people. Many of the firms coming to Joseph's choose to also facilitate some workshops to tackle specific questions that they have, to tell their story about the innovation, how it has been created, and to get into an in-depth interaction with the participants of such a workshop. So that is another takeaway. Then you have networking between the companies. Actually, they there are some mechanisms where they cross and find new partners, where they interact with the firms, and also smaller firms can interact with bigger firms, and or in a specific industry there will be some interesting takeaways how to work together. And then there's other effects or takeaways that will only show in the medium or long run. Like we have worked with one company that has thought about mass customization, and only now 1.5 years later they actually got to apply the knowledge that they gained from their presence in Joseph's when they were actually having something like a shop-in-shop in a major warehouse, and they could easily apply all the learnings that they gained from Joseph's. But that took 1.5 years until they found out that this was actually something that they could put into practice.
Unmuted.
Thank you very much, Julia. Thank you very much, Julia, for the answer. We have another question coming from Richard Adams from NEMODE, and his question is about, did you or companies encounter any unexpected ethical concerns dealing with the data collection from random, self-selecting participants from the public or consumers. Julian, do you have, or Catherine, do you have any views on this?
Muted.
Yeah. Okay. Ethical issues, I don't think we like ethical concerns, not, because people who come to Joseph's would go there voluntarily, like they are curious, they want to find out something new, they're eager to find out about anything, and if they have concerns, it's really an open space where it's okay just to leave and say, no, I don't want to proceed anymore, and then it would be not a unexpected issue or concern, but something that is just being talked about, as there is always some what we call guides in Joseph's that will actually talk to the visitors and show them around. What can happen is that unexpected types of people would come into Joseph's which want to talk about anything. That can be really, really rich to understand the background of specific people, to get their opinion about specific innovations into context. But of course, it can also be demanding to listen to private issues of visitors. Then it's for our guides really to be patient and to interact. But that's something that probably everyone who is in retail or in selling position has to face.
Unmuted.
Thank you. There is another question coming from the questions box, and this is: to which extent did you consider organizational aspects at Joseph's? And this is from Angela Roth.
Thank you very much for this question. I think very important to mention first is that the study, I think, is important as being very exploratory due to the nation state of the art. So our main goal was to explore and identify different elements which we can then develop further and go into more detail. However, in terms of organizational aspects at Joseph's, whether and to which extent we considered them, I think due to the nature of the space and the co-creation taking place at a living lab like Joseph's, you can see various organizational functions engaging with them, ranging from probably marketing to the R&D department. At this stage, we didn't necessarily consider or differentiate, because it really depends on what is their objective and why do they want to engage in this co-creation process. So I think this is something we can definitely further explore and take into consideration in the future. But at this point in this study, we did not consider it.
Very good. Thank you for the answer to that question. We have still time for the last question, and there is a question coming from Italy. And the question is, how easy is to set up a living lab like Joseph's? And I think that this is for the Joseph's team. Julia, Catherine, you might want to answer this question. Thank you.
Muted.
This is a great question. Thank you very much for this one. Of course, it's not easy at all. I really have to say that it took us 2 years preparation until we came up with what you can see at Joseph's nowadays. We are constantly learning and developing and pushing ourselves to practice what we preach and be open, apply service design in an open sphere. So it is pretty challenging, and you may not think that you need quite a large number of employees to actually enable such co-creation. We have quite a large team with different focus. So there is marketing, there is events that have to be run to attract new visitors and to make it a living, a live space. There is there's the projects with the companies, there is the interaction with the visitors. So it is very multifaceted and in various dimensions activities going on. And then of course there is also an organizational background as university and the Fraunhofer as organizations, which are, let's put it that way, not used to run a living lab. And lots of new processes are happening and have to be institutionalized.
Unmuted.
Fantastic, fantastic answer. And with that answer and those lovely questions, we are closing the webinar. Thank you very much for your participation. Katerina and Julia will make all this information available for you in the internet. You can later on, or perhaps next week, you can dial in and you can see the information. Katerina, any final words from your side?
Yeah, thank you very much for your questions and for listening to our webinar. If you still have any questions, please feel free to drop me or Julia an email, and we're happily getting back to you as soon as we can. Thank you.